All right. Greetings, everyone. I hope you all doing well. This is Behnom from Poznan University of Technology. Welcome to COMPA 2023. And I hope you're having great times today, hearing our scholars from different places about very valuable topics. So I'm going to introduce our track as International and Global Perspective in Policy and Administration. Today we're gonna hear 4 presentations from different scholars, and I hope that we're going to have great times. So I'm passing mic to my my friends Hassan as second moderator.
Hello all, thank you, Benham. I hope that we're having a great discussion together. I think basic instruction have been already discussed by Benham. Every presenter has like 15 minutes of talking, and then we can have discussion. Today we have 4 discussions delivered by scholars from Ohio University, University of Texas at Dallas, Poznan University of Technology, and University of Massachusetts. We're waiting for, yeah, John's here. The first presenter is John. Is going to talk about wealth and human security in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Without any further ado, John, please, you're waiting, please.
All right. Let me quickly share my screen then. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. That's great. So good morning, everyone. I'm John Aqueda from Ohio University. I'm actually from the Center for International Studies, and I'm presenting on the topic Wealth and Human Insecurity in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'll just start. All right, so I think I can. All right, the African continent has a lot of natural resources, human resources, or what I can say, almost every resources on it. But these resources does not really translate into the kind of development that the continent need. So initially, when you see these resources, you think that the continent should develop at a very speed pace, but what we normally say is that nothing is really happening that much. Sach and Werner, 1995, noted that one of the surprising elements of economic growth is that countries with abundant natural wealth have tended to lag in all aspects of economic development. And countries over here, I mean to say those are the global south, the developing countries, especially the sub-Saharan Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the countries in Africa adversely affected by this phenomenon. They have almost every resource that they need, but the country still lag in development. All right, so the objective of the study is to explore the dynamics of the abundance of natural resources and its ramification or implication on human security in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The country was actually chosen as a case study because the country is just blessed with enormous natural wealth, but it invariably led to human insecurity issues in the country. The study has been designed based on the following thematic areas: a brief history of the Democratic Republic of Congo in relation to natural resource wealth. I also look at the theory of resource curse. I also look at the concept of human security and the effect of the abundance of natural resource on human security in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So we look at a very brief historical background of the country. It actually has a very rich history, but I'll just carve this one for the purpose of the presentation. So the first record of DRC, formerly known as the Kingdom of Congo, was in 1482, when the Portuguese explorers discovered the mouth of the Congo River. It was later established as a center for the Atlantic slave trade by the British, the Dutch, the Portuguese, and then the French merchants. Their activity actually pushed the country into a period of history of turmoil because it's human and natural resource world. So because of the rich nature of their resource, everybody, there's like a scramble for DRC, and it ended up messing up the whole country. When we jump into 1885 to 1908, we saw the activity of Leopold, who from Belgium, who exploited the Congo with the help of concession companies, which used forced labor to extract valuable natural resources. As a result of this, millions of people died, and then the Democratic Republic of Congo became highly indebted due to Belgian loans that were given with no assurance of paying them back. This theory underpinned the study, the theory of resource scarce. It is actually puzzling how countries with natural resource wealth have failed to grow more rapidly than those without, especially in this context, especially from Africa. Frankel 2010 referred to the phenomenon as a natural resource scarce. The term has been defined as a perverse effect of a country's natural resource on its economic, social, and political well-being. Pierre and James hypothesized that abundant natural resources are stimuli for conflict and instability in many developing countries, especially those endowed with a lot of natural resources. Carpenter posits that the DRC has has fallen victim to the so-called resource curse. In the same regard, Bridges 2013 elucidated that the history of the DRC is fraught with persistent war, foreign intervention, and poor governance, resulting in a current state of affairs with DRC among the most impoverished countries in the world. Erin 2018 also connect the economic instability and overall downfall of the DRC government with the notion of resource scarce, focusing on the concept that countries in the global south that had an abundance of natural resources tend to have less economic growth and then affected more with conflict. So I tried to look at some of the effects of this phenomena on human security. So when I reviewed the literature, I got to see that Marion and Maurice 2010 noted that the DRC has a dreadful past, a terrible present situation, locked in both internal and external trouble due to its natural resources. The struggle for resource by a section of the population continue to affect the country negatively. Natural resources are used either as a financing mechanism for warring parties or as a war objective in itself. According to HITA 2014, the issue of human security in DRC was comprised of a huge refugee crisis, the Great Lake crisis, which inflicted a suffering on many individuals. When we look at the issue from the educational level, UNICEF 2017 noted that over 440,000 children from the 5 provinces in DRC were prevented from going to school because of the kind of crisis that continue to happen. Kenneth and Latif 2022 asserted that over 4 million children between the ages of 9 to 14 remain out of school. The crisis in the country created a risky situation for children and adolescents. Most of them are subjected to abuse, exploitation, and forced recruitment by army groups. So education, in terms of education, the country is really, really suffering because there is chaos in the country. When we look at the issue with food insecurity in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the World Food Program reported that the majority of the Democratic DRC Congo remain widely exposed to food insecurity, malnutrition, hunger, despite the country's enormous agricultural potentials. Food insecurity is one of the challenges that confront the Democratic Republic of Congo. The country is currently battling the second largest hunger crisis in the world, even though the country has a lot of arable land that can be developed into something great due to the connection between natural resources and insecurity. They find themselves in this current state. According to the World Bank 2021, about 64% of the population is in extremely poor position, people living on less than $1.90 a day. The country has a vast amount of oil. The oil that reserve of the country was very vast, but nothing to write home about. They have diamond, they have gold and other natural resources, but none of these things has translated into the kind of comfort that they need. Rather, there is a political instability, crash, and human rights abuse in the country. We also look at health insecurity in the country. One thing that I discovered was that the quest of the rebel groups to control the resource in the country place the health system in a very vulnerable position. One of the punitive actions that left the people of DRC in such health crisis is the attack of benevolent foreign health workers assisting victims. So during the study, I realized that there are some what I'll call them tags or some bad people in the community or in a country who actually try to attack benevolent foreign health workers who are trying to help those in the country. So this is a very big issue in DRC. Finally, the activity of the rebel groups made it important to reach people in most parts of the conflict-prone areas. So in my conclusion, I stated that it is a fact that natural resources serve as a great asset to every country. It can be used to ensure socio-economic development. The concern is that countries in the global north, like the Western world, use the same resources to attain an enviable development to actually help their citizens. But in the other part of the country from the global south, the case is not like that. The greatest worry is that the DRC, just like any other African country, has been endowed with enormous natural resources, but the kind of development we seek has not been achieved. Contrarily, violence, mismanagement, threats to human security are associated with exploitation of Africa's natural resources. So the combination of a weak state and abundance of natural resource create the opportunity for external agents to take advantage of a weakness of power and exploit the natural resources. So I conclude by saying that the evidence so far show that there is a negative correlation between Africa's natural resource endowment and human security. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean, for your presentation. It was a very interesting topic. So as Hassan discussed, we're gonna have 5 minutes or a bit more since you finished your presentation in a very good procedure of timing. So I want to ask any participants or audience if you have any question from John, please feel free to ask. All right, so I'm going to start by a question from John. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. It was a very interesting topic. As I tried to actually make some notes during the presentation, the Democratic Republic of Congo is such a very resourceful country, and you found these indicators that project this mismanagement or the kind of development that you think that is need to be provided. I wanted to ask you that from your perspective, by identifying these indicators, most particularly education, food insecurity, and health security, from your perspective, if you want to come up with a framework to address these challenges in a comprehensive way, do you think that there are something in the future of your research that try to tackle these challenges in a way to provide some solutions, or it's just like addressing the current challenges? Thank you.
Oh yeah, well, I think that's a very good question. I think the common challenge, which is the fundamental challenge, must be addressed first. So I've been thinking in the research, I've been thinking, well, most of this thing has to do with politics of it. So the structure of the political atmosphere of the country must be looked at. And then secondly, the foreign intervention, because in the reading that I did, in the research that I did, you could see there are a lot of foreign intervention in the country. The guns that come into the country, they're all part of foreign intervention. So those are the things that must be tackled. But the case of DRC is very dicey because everybody is having an interest in it. The West, even the South, everybody is trying to have an interest in it. So it is not just a minute thing that must be done. The politics must be there. The foreign intervention issues must be tackled. I think when we start from there, things will be fine. In the larger paper, the paper did not blame the Congolese for the kind of situation they found themselves in right now. I don't blame them, but there is foreign intrusion in their activity. So it must be tackled from a primary level to that higher level. Thank you.
Thank you for your answers. I want to ask, please, Mr. James, we are hearing your question from our presenter.
Yeah, thank you, Benham. John, good presentation. Here's my question. When you look at the situation in DRC, is similar to what is happening in other African countries. So my question is it a failure of leadership or governance that we are having this resource curse being magnified in unimaginable proportions, or is more of lack of ideological consistency when it comes to fighting for the people of the Congo? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That's a very good question. So from my perspective, I would say leadership play a major part of it. I think in the conclusion, I stated that there is the weak state nature of the country created that kind of leeway for any intruder to get in there and then do whatever they want. So yeah, ideology is really a matter, but from my perspective, leaders must lead. Leaders must lead. When leaders are not leading, anybody can do anything. So I think leadership in DRC is really, really weak. So that's why people are just penetrating and they are doing things that they like to do. This situation has been lingering for a very long time now. And if the leadership is supposed to solve or deal with this issue, they would have done it. But I think they're also getting a lot out of the whole situation. So I think everybody is sitting aloof and they are not doing much. Leadership is one of the major problems that I see in this phenomenon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John, and thanks for participation of other. Let's move to the next presentation. The intersectionality of gender and religion in the Indian Civil Service, a study of representation and inclusion by Namrata and Meghna. Please.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Good morning to all of you. I'm really glad to be part of this very prestigious community. And I am today presenting my research on intersectionality in Indian civil service. Let me share my screen. Can you see the screen, please?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for letting me know. Okay. So as I am Namrata Sharma, I am a doctoral student at Public and Non-Profit Management, University of Texas at Dallas. I'm presenting this paper in collaboration with Dr. Meghna Sabharwal, who's a professor and a past head of the Public and Non-Profit Management at the University of Texas at Dallas. And I have been working in Indian civil service for past more than 2 decades, and I have a kind of practitioner experience. Maybe that's what I can bring to the table. I am talking about Indian civil service here, and as you know, that India is housed to 1/5 of world's population. So it's a very relevant study in the sense that how does the concept of representative bureaucracy and inclusion, it translates to the majority of the population, majority of world's population, which I feel is very relevant in the present context, because these groups, the minorities and the underprivileged groups, they need a voice at the table. They need a voice at the decision-making table, so that their concerns are addressed. And it's not that some other sections of the society they decide it all the time for them. So hearing them out is a very important context in the bureaucracy and the democratic setup in different countries, and particularly so in India, which is highly which is highly diverse and populous. So my contents of the presentation are, we will just cover a little bit about what is representative bureaucracy, we know. Then a little bit about India, what is the diversity in India. Actually, I was looking up online, and India is the most diverse country in the world. So which creates a lot of intersectionality, a lot of interesting variations and combinations for the bureaucracy and the democracy. And what is Indian civil service? The purpose of study, data and methods, research and future research and references. This is the outline of my presentation today. Representative bureaucracy, it means a bureaucracy which mirrors the society, basically. So and it is a concept which was proposed by Ken Meyer in 70s, and there are 2 types of bureaucracies that have been talked about. Mosher actually talked about it before Ken Meyer, and that's passive bureaucracy, means that the bureaucracy that demographically mirrors the constituents, but then a better part is better is the active bureaucracy, when the constituents actually represent the demographics that they come from. They actually promote the policies for those social groups. About India, so I wanted to just talk about India a little bit here. The population of India is it's the most populous country in the world now. It has surpassed China, and it has got 48.5% females, and they have several religions. In fact, Hinduism is the majority religion, and then Muslims, Christianity, Sikhism, Jainism, and Buddhism. These are the major religions. The figures are from Census 2011. They in the Constitution of India, there are provisions of equal opportunity for all sections of the society, and there's no discrimination on the basis of religion, race, caste, or sex, descent, place of birth, and so on and so forth. It's like the equal opportunity, equal employment opportunity, a thing that is here. So this is the breakup of the religion. We can see here. So the majority of the other religion other than Hindu is the Muslims, and the other religions are a little bit lesser. So Muslims are like 14.3% of the total population. The Indian civil service is a remnant. It's a legacy of the British civil service, actually. So Britishers, they had colonized India for quite some time, and then it is a remnant of the basically legacy from the British civil service, and it is considered still. It's considered the steel frame of Indian government. And it's the successor to British civil service that I talked about. And there's a ministry, the central ministry, that takes care of the recruitment to the civil service, and also the positioning of the officers at different levels, at the federal level and the different states. And there's a regular, every year there's a recruitment examination, and it is considered one of the toughest examinations in the world because of the competition that is there. So it's like success rate is 0.002%. It's very, very low, and almost 1 million candidates appear every year. So it's a tough exam relatively. Purpose of this study is to explore representation of various identities and social backgrounds in the leadership position in Indian bureaucracy, particularly the Indian civil service. We collected data for this from the websites of the different ministries and the departments, and we tried to classify the officers according to their last names. So from the names, we could classify them as from which religion they're coming, and men or women was easy to classify. And then we coded the gender and the religion basically like that. The results are that actually there's no special reservation or quotas for women or any religious basis in the civil service. So entry is only on merit on the basis of that examination, and the percentage of women in Indian civil service, it stands at 21% now. And out of all the top level positions, that there are like 70 top level secretary level positions in the departments and the ministries. 4 are women, rest are males. And as we go down the hierarchy, the intersectionality means a woman and a Muslim. That number may increase, but percentage is very, very extremely low. So that shows a bit of disappointing results as far as the minorities and the representation of women goes. The entry level, we just looked at the entry level for women. At the entry level, there are like 25% women entering Indian civil service and 3.5% Muslims. That's the primary major religion besides Hinduism. And then we looked at the gender in the various levels. So the levels there two levels, the top levels here, secretary and additional secretary, like SES or equivalent. So women are relatively low here. And there are higher women in the middle and still a little bit lower at the lower levels. So there's a leadership pipeline issue. There's a clog in the leadership pipeline per se. And in the SCS equivalent positions, the minorities, the religious minorities, they form 4% of all the occupants, all the people, all the officers that occupy those positions. And in other leadership position, it's like 9%. The religious minorities are like around 20%, 21%. The conclusion, I would like to conclude here. So we saw that though India has improved regarding the representation of minorities and women, it's improving, but the improvement is a little bit slow, and there is a need to look at the representation of these communities in the bureaucracy at the decision making to make the Indian democracy more vibrant and more efficient, equitable. It's more about the equity part. So the conclusions are that women have a fair entry point, but still their representation in the decision making is low. And it really casts a shadow on the equitable and fair civil service system, which should be representative of the people it serves. And tracking, if we can track the career graph of the women and the officers of religious minority for future, we are talking about future direction. Maybe we can track the career graphs, they enter, and how do they get lost in that leadership pipeline? Where do they go? Why are they not able to rise to those top positions where actually you can really participate in active representation? You can really work for the groups that you represent. And the study can be expanded to state governments, because state governments have different demographics. Like some states have a higher population of Muslims, some states have higher population of Christians, and so on and so forth. So these are the references. Thank you so much for listening to me. And if there are any questions, I would really like to welcome them.
Thank you very much, Namrata, for your presentation. It was another interesting topics, and I think it's very important to find out these data and how to address these minority issues in this research connected to women and minorities in religion. I want to encourage our audience to, in case if you have any question, please ask from our presenter. So Hassan, I think you can start, and after you, other may follow.
Thank you, and thanks, Marcel, for this interesting presentation. Something that I'm quite curious about is that I'm not sure it is in the scope of your research or not, but have you searched about the possible solution to this challenge, if it's going to be through the attitude of bottom up or top down? It is going to be solved through a lot of demands, public demands, or through the governance policies that we have to address this problem.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before I respond to your question, I would like to just mention that Dr. Sabarwal is also here with us in this breakout room. she is the
I'll let you answer the tough questions, Namrata. Happy to chip in anytime.
Sure. So I think that there are a lot of solutions to these type of things are not that easy to come by. There are a lot of societal issues behind them. Like there's the very patriarchal mindset in Southeast Asian countries, very patriarchal mindset, which really inhibits the career growth of women, or maybe the career prospects of women, the potential. They are not able to realize that potential. and also that there are certain there's a lot of difference in the literacy rate between different communities. Like the Muslims, the largest community in India are the Muslims, but the literacy rates are low. And probably India has gained independence in it's been 70 years or so since we have gained independence. The thing is that it's that way. It's not a very it's a relatively newer democracy. It's relatively in the considering the age of the countries and those kind of things. So it's emerging, it's evolving, and those efficient allocation of resources. The government has tried to put in those policies in place, but not as quotas. So I would just underline here that no quotas. So quotas could have been maybe one of the ways, but probably it holds back the equal opportunity thing. So that may not be the right solution. But the right solution would be empowering the communities through education, through awareness, and allow and of course through supporting them to educate themselves and be a part of the governance process per se. So some communities they are a bit lagging, but yes, lately they have realized how important it is to be at the board, at the like a board of public service. Basically that's what I call it. So to be in the board of the public service and to create the right kind of voice and the noise for the community per se.
And if I may just quickly add, I put a link in the chat. And there was a paper that was published for the 100th year for public administration. And it basically takes 5 vignettes out of 5 different regions. And Sean McCandless and others put it together, but I really credit Sean for it. And Sean requested I write something on India. And in fact, the topic I chose was civil service, women in civil service in India. So there I've tried to do something, Hassan, to your question, it's a complex problem, right? It's not just one way. So I looked at the historical, structural, cultural, economic, political, barriers that the society in itself has. So it's a lot going on there. So I encourage, if anybody's interested, there's stuff on Australia, Sub-Saharan Africa. So do take a look at that if it's useful in any ways. But it's an ongoing research. We even tried to get caste in it, because caste is one of those other intersectionality identities, which the society is very much but we could not get it with the last names. It was a very difficult challenge. I think Namrata and I talked about that. So we'll be working on this, trying to further maybe interview a few people, especially women in civil service in India, which is a hard group to get a hold of, but that's our next step. But thank you all. Good question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sabharwal. We want to appreciate your presence here. And we have 2 questions from Alicia and James. Since we consider 15 minutes for the presentation and 5 minutes for questions, I would be glad to, if we start by Alicia and after that James, and please try to wrap it up in 5 minutes. I appreciate it. Alicia, please.
I'll try to keep it brief. So as a female who is a public policy student, I've definitely seen, in my classes that, we are definitely an underrepresented group. And you see that in a lot of countries, even in the United States. I think only 19% of the government is currently female. So I was just kind of thinking about, in some of my classes, we've learned, like in New Zealand, they have like quotas where like a certain percentage of the government needs to be female, so it's more representative. Do you think that policies like that are actually effective, or like you're kind of forcing people to be involved? Or do you think that it's more about like kind of outreach to young women and getting them to like understand the importance of female voices in government?
Alicia, very quickly, firstly, thank you for a comment, but next track or next time, whatever 115 that panel is, there's a student, Young Suk, who's presenting on this topic of quota for women in civil service in South Korea. If you're interested in that, I just encourage you to attend that, but I'll let Namrata handle this one.
Thank you so much. And it's a very good question. I have not really studied quotas per se as a research question, and but personally working in the Indian government for such a long time, coming from my experience, I feel that quota is a very short-term solution. These social problems, they need sustainable solutions that could only come through empowerment of communities, that could come through the literacy, that could come through greater awareness. So maybe stopgap quota can be a very stopgap and a short-term solution. And if we want the countries to evolve to really progress, then that we need to work on the long-term solutions that the whole society benefits from, because these long-term solutions have a lot of positive externalities for the whole society.
Thank you very much, Navarta, for your answer. So I want to ask Dr. James to answer a question, and please pay attention to the time because you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot for this insightful presentation. Anything on intersectionality is always constructive and very insightful. So I have a quick question. So when you look at representative bureaucracy, the issue is always, how do you translate the passive representation into an active one? So my question is, when you look at the representation that we have now in India, how is that translating into an active force in substantive terms, in terms of making a difference for the groups that are represented? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. James, for your question. It's a good question, very, very interesting question, in fact. Again, from the research point of view, it has been shown that representative bureaucracy has positive outcomes for the communities. So that's a proven fact. But no, for the time being, I cannot really quote on any studies regarding India. But I can say from, again, personal experience that being a woman, being in civil service, a part of civil service, I really I try to promote the interest of the women in the organization, and try to affect the policies that were more women centric. It really that's a proven fact that a representative bureaucracy has positive outcomes for the communities, and obviously it will translate in India too. And probably we can work on that a little bit later, because we are still working on numbers, and Dr. Sabharwal would like to supplement me probably.
Right. No, we also were looking, thanks James for that question. We're looking at the gendered nature of organizations. So we even broke down all the ministries, the 70 ministries, and we were trying to see, which ministries have maybe slightly overrepresentation of women. And as you can imagine, the gendered nature of organizations where you have your women related issues, HR, any of those, you did see a slightly higher representation. So again, do we see more women in those finance, transportation, energy kinds of ministries? No, some ministries had nothing. Even tourism didn't have women in it. So it was very interesting to see there, and then we can hopefully make that next leap of actually seeing what's being done actively. Is it making a difference or not? But from Namrata's experience, I know it does. I know she's been with HR and she's been much more attuned to these issues, especially women issues. So literature says, but yeah, clearly we don't know. So that's good next step, James, for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer, Dr. Sabharwal, and thank you for James for this interesting question. I think this topic is very interesting, and if we find time at the end, we can discuss. We can provide a discussion to have more questions if possible. So I want to ask our next presenter, Ms. Kaya De Matteo, PhD candidate from University of Massachusetts, Boston, and her title of presentation is Beyond a Single Story, situating a life world of host families in a university Swahili homestic program in Tanzania. So
if anyone has a question, we will hear it. Otherwise, we could move on with the next. James, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kaya. This is a very important work, and thanks for giving a voice to the otherwise voiceless when it comes to foreign language study abroad. I just have a quick question, and my question is, when you look at the trend in the literature, is it suggesting that the host voices are likely to be accepted now that it seems to be a focal? Because sometimes we know it's a gap, it's a missing link, and these voices are being captured, but then the other side is that are this likely to be accepted and valued? So what's the trend in the current literature on that? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for your question. So most recently, Theodore actually just published about 2 years ago. She recently published the 4 next steps in study abroad research, and one of her main areas was actually focusing on the need for host families to contribute more. And the reason for this is when you look at the homestay experience, it's the host families that are central to that. So as far as most of the studies looking at the linguistic and cultural learning of students, we need to take a step back and see how without host families, that would never happen. So yes, they are taking this seriously. Again, most of the research is conducted more in popular language destinations, but I will say that especially in service learning, which the study did not focus on, but service learning is a component in study abroad. They're concentrating a lot more on host community voices, not necessarily host families, but definitely on host community impacts within the global south or developing countries. So it is definitely coming more to surface.
If I may quickly say, Kaya, very important work. I thought it was so well done, and you spent so much time, energy, effort actually going and embedding yourself and learning through those lived experiences yourself. It's very interesting because, you know, we are at UT Dallas are really focusing on globalization. We want to do study abroad. But what I'm seeing is that when students are taken there, they're almost protected in a little bubble. They're staying in those hotels, or they're staying maybe on campus, but with their own rooms. They barely even share a room. So it's just going, enjoying the place and coming back. They're not truly getting that experience. Is this something common, what you see of in the US context when students go study abroad? I mean, I don't know if UTD is unique in that way. Maybe I have to bring it up to our graduate dean.
Thank you for your question. You saw me smiling as you were asking this because there's actually someone, Doerr, D-O-E-R-R, who writes a lot about this. Primarily, when we look at, you know, the demographics, most students who study abroad are still primarily, you know, from European backgrounds. It is starting to diversify. The average American undergraduate or graduate student who studies abroad, even in developing countries, even when they stay with host families, there's this romanticized version of immersion, right? If you do stay with a host family, you're not necessarily having an immersive environment because sometimes these students are only sticking with, you know, the other study abroad students. Sometimes they're not really passionate about getting to know the local culture. They may be sitting in their room on Facebook a lot. So Doerr writes a lot about the romanticization of immersion, and immersion and living with a host family does not guarantee the experience that people usually see in the study abroad brochures.
Thank you. I'll look it up.
Thank you. Yeah, I would highly recommend that you look into Delaware because she recently just published something about this, and I'd be happy to share more of that.
Thank you, Kaya.
You're welcome.
All right, great. So first of all, it seems that our room has been turned on for like 5 minutes earlier. So if the last presentation took more than like 14 minutes with the discussion, we may have to just leave the room and then re-enter it, just in case. The last presentation would be a critical assessment on the SDGs in the light of shortcomings in inclusive policies and agendas. Mr. Behnaam would present it. Of course, I try to just swap in some, like 1 or 2 times, not very much. But let's start without any further ado.
Thank you very much, Hassan. So everyone, thanks for all the presentations. We are going to be quick on this one to reach the time. So our title, as Hassan mentioned, is Critical Assessment of the SDG in Light of Shortcoming in Inclusive Policies and Agendas. Presenters and participants in this research is Hassan Bazazadeh from Poznan University of Technology, me myself, Behnaam Ahmadi from Poznan University of Technology as well, and Kaya Di Matteo from University of Massachusetts, Boston, United States. So I will try to pass quick on the presentation overview. We're going to discuss about the concept of sustainable development, what is SDG, what are the implications, and what type of similar methods exist, what are the critics on policies, and how an integrated system approach can help to address these challenges. So I start quickly by introducing the concept of sustainable development. I'm sure everyone heard about it. So based on United Nations, sustainable development is defined as a development of current needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It's an action towards sustainable and resilient future for people and the world, which aim to actually harmonize 3 fundamental elements of economic, social, and environmental protection. Inside sustainable development, we have a concept named SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, consists of 17 goals, actually made by United Nations as well. So based on that, we have a 2030 agenda, which try to focus on providing a common blueprint for peace and prosperity based on 17 goals that is developed, and to actually emphasize and empower global partnership, which urgently try to empower developed and underdeveloping nations to actually make SDG true, reaching to the goals of sustainable development. The purpose of our study is to critically examine what is SDG, what is the concept, and how it actually works. And we try to find the gaps and see where these lack of inclusive policies and agendas may provide the negative impacts in action. It's under development, this study is under development, but we present whatever we reach during our research. And what we have done is we tried to conduct a literature review going through the concept of SDG, and we try to find what are the aims, ambitions, and the most important things, how to actually we try to identify the gaps. And for addressing these gaps and challenges and shortcomings in inclusive policies, we try to develop a framework which try to use system thinking as a view and as a perspective to address one of the challenges which by scholars mentioned as an importance of integrated system approach to face complex challenges such as SDG, which might have. There are some implications of SDG. I've tried to be very quick on it. SDG could be applied in business governments for stakeholders. A variety of business practices nowadays try to follow these 17 goals and to follow and reach to ensuring that sustainable consumption and production are at the same page with all the place all around the globe. There are a lot of business opportunities. Next to that, we can see that being a part of SDGs can provide a reputation for brand and add some values to their work.
Okay, apart from the SDG method that we were talking about, there are similar methods such as ESG and circular economy that they try to cover some aspects that we may have problems in SDG. And if we take a look at ESG and circular economy, we can see that ESG is mainly based on the 3 pillars of sustainability, while circular economy is based on production, distribution, consumption, collection, and recycle, which is actually designed for mainly product and recyclable and also regenerative systems. Next slide, please. There are some critics on SDG, and here we try to just mention some of the most important ones. I'm not going to mention all of them because of the time. However, some of them can be mentioned here. Firstly, that the concept SDG concept influence has mostly been argumentative because it's influencing how people and how players of this concept perceive and communicate about sustainable development. The other problem is that, because of sometimes we may lack of data availability or even reliable data, we may have a lot of problems to have enough data to have the SDG and or even other methods ranking. And about complexity is another problem that should be actually addressed during SDG assessment, while it is going to be very difficult because of a lot of balance between the items among the SDGs that should be addressed. And when we focus on sustainability policy, we may review some of the scholars' work, and we can check some of the gaps, such as the gaps in economic categories of functions and links to prevent responsible behavior, which is very important in the next slides we're going to talk about. Another shortcoming can be seen in monitoring and policy formulation, as well as the fact that current method of reaching the SDGs actually comes at the expense of environmental degradation. And finally, last but not least, is that to evaluate countries' progress towards SDG, this task is quite complex and multifaceted.
So in this slide, quickly, I'm going to mention that there are some scholars that try to address how an integrated system approach can help to actually elaborate such a complex challenge, or those challenges that arise from SDG concepts. We can see that from Joseph Fixel, this has been mentioned that sustainability models somehow become oversimplified, and they didn't consider the complexity of this actually concept. And we have another emphasis that there is an urgent need for having an integrated system approach to address this complexity. And most particularly at the end, we can see from UN report that traditional sector-based approaches are not fit to tackle these challenges. Therefore, there is an immediate need to come up with integrated system approach to address these complex concepts and situation which might be related to this situation.
About this slide, probably it's better to go at the end of the slide to have an overview about the whole performance of countries. This is actually the whole performance of the countries according to Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and this is based on the SDG index that each country performed. As you can see, probably we could expect that, okay, European countries and North American countries have the better performance. So probably we have to act like them and assign them as a role model to reach the sustainable development world. However, if we come back to the first of the slide, we can categorize the SDGs into two different categories. First one is how they have access and how much they have access to facilities and resources in these two industry and economic growth. It is as the whole index that we saw, better situation in European countries, in North America, while the situation in Middle East, in most of Asia and Africa is it shows poor results. However, when we take a look at the indexes like SDG 12 and climate action, we can see that the categories which are related to behaviors of the society shows the exact opposite result. So it means that while a lot of countries in these regions, like mainly in South Hemisphere, shows that while they behave perfectly because of lack of enough access to resources and economic growth, they showed poor performance on the Sustainable Development Goal performance.
So here quickly, I'm going to pass from this slide. We're going to use system thinking as an instrument to address these challenges. And as you can see in this framework, we use system thinking as a worldview to find out the complex phenomena of SDG and try to develop a framework. But our proposed framework to use an integrated system approach to address these challenges in SDGs and try to, based on that, we want to actually provide a chance for more insightful policy development for an inclusive planning, is that using system thinking as an instrument, try to find out three main variables in the SDG concept, focusing on leverages, system archetype, and interconnections. And by that, we can provide a more comprehensive picture about how interrelation between these goals could affect that. In sense of having a good understanding and comprehension, the feedbacks can give good insights for policy development and inclusiveness in planning, which we try to elaborate. And based on this approach, we might hope that we could address these challenges in a good way.
In conclusion, about the critics, we could talk about the fact that a lot of policies these days have been defined based on the sustainability performance of countries, which are defined based on the characteristics of developed countries, and it can be regarded as exclusive metrics. On the other hand, the results can be in a form of discouragement of countries, with different character, mainly developing countries, and encourage them to behave models or developing countries. And it also may lead to misinformation regarding the high-level countries in terms of sustainability index and low index countries. And finally, countries which are mainly developing countries should perform some behavior modification to improve sustainability and save the planet Earth, while developed countries which are responsible for serious global challenges would act as a role model for sustainable governance, which can be considered as an exclusive policy.
And as a solution, based on what we find out in the literature, what we're going to do and what we plan to do in research is try to address this comprehensive interdisciplinary framework to find out this gap and challenge in a way that we could employ systemic perspective using system thinking as an instrument, and try to differentiate these goals in a way that we could pack them in a systemic manner to find out these gaps and find out actually those leverages that try to amplify on the narratives that at the end try to project as a whole. And in the third step, we try to address this issue of the necessity of actually utilization of integrated system approach, which is based on UN actually requirement in the report that such a framework or these type of approaches is needed. And at the end, we hope that our research will end up in providing developments for inclusive policies to address this shortcoming. And this was our conclusion. Here are our references, and thank you for your attention. We tried to finish it as quick as possible. So in case if we wanted to continue, we can come back to the room and discuss about question and answer if everyone, I think, agree on that.
All rooms have been reopened.
All right. I I want to express my gratitude to those who came back to this part. So we try to finish our presentation on time as much as possible. So in this part, in 5 to 7 minutes, we're going to discuss question and answer. In case you have any questions, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Benan and Hassan. A lot of work went into this presentation and it shows in the conceptualization. So thank you very much. So here is my question, but before that, I'm going to make a comment. So when I finished school, I started as a national service personnel. We started implementing Agenda 21 in Ghana in the early 2000s. And then in 2005, I was working as an intern at the UN Secretariat in New York when they launched the Millennium Development Goals. And then by the time they launched SDGs, I was working as a director of an institute, working with communities to implement it. And here's what I have seen. There's a lot of inconsistencies, and that is created by political variable. So you may have one country making a progress, and then the next time.
This session goes into lunch, so feel free to stay as long as you want, because I've been going in and out of these rooms, and I know that you guys have some really interesting things you're talking about. Feel free, but just know that you have the whole 30 minutes of lunch before the next session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the inconsistency is created by the political variable. While one government is in favor, things are working well, the next time there's a change of government, sometimes things come to a halt. And this inconsistency happens in developed and developing countries. So I'm just curious, how do you capture that in a study as a way to help practitioners make a headway using the systems approach? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this great question, James. And I think you found out where we try to actually focus on in our research, and it's really actually good for us. I agree with you, and you had the real experience about what you said, this inconsistency, which is somehow connected to the politics variables, which will definitely affect on the policies. And what we find out is if we try to project the SDGs at 70 goals one by one, and we try to go deep through to see how these measurements works as rates and trends. And when we try to provide a pattern, and as we try to focus on those leverages, those actually important SDGs, which shows that which countries, based on their access to resources and infrastructure that they try to railroad during centuries or during decades, they have kind of better opportunities. And those countries who have lack of resources have difficult situation, but the countries who have better condition in having access to resources try to actually provide policy for underdevelopment or developing countries, as we can say, that try to kind of build them in a sustainable way, that we can see some inconsistency that in large developed country like United States, Europe, in terms of actually having actions and planning for climate change, is one of the most important topics about sustainable development and SDGs. Or how responsible behavior for consuming or producing. These things are somehow shows another narratives. And based on this kind of system approach, what we try to do is to have this system thinking as an instrument. In a way, we can zoom in inside the SDGs and find out what is happening between all these goals and variables. And at the same time, we can zoom out. And based on these two actually wide picture that we can have in our mind, we can find out where are the gaps. And I think there is a need for more actually in details research to find out how these political variables will affect policies, and which at the end, what we can see is the shortcoming of inclusive policy, more exclusive policies rather than having inclusive policies. I hope I could answer the question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. And I want to mention that since we have more time, we're going to discuss about if anyone have more question about this presentation, and in case there's a question for other topics. So we are here for more than 20 minutes, I guess, right?
Well, thank you for your presentation. We do have to take a lunch break, and at least the ones who are here in the Western Hemisphere, I guess. But I enjoyed your presentation, and I go back to James's point, and thank you, James, for sharing all your work experiences. You know, he's right. We had the millennial goals. Now we have the SDGs. By 2030, we'll have some other goals. So is there a way to track, you know, what happened and actually the millennial goals? Where's their overlap with the SDGs? What progress has been or not has been made. And so I wondered about that aspect, because these are very lofty goals, right? Remove poverty completely. I mean, that kind of, so I wonder.
Thank you very much. I think the only thing that we can find out in time is to going through data that are produced during the time frame, that how some underdevelopment countries being assessed based on their performance to addressing SDGs agenda, and how developed nations or developed countries try to actually do the similarities. And by assessing and analyzing data, which we try to find out some data sets that try to elaborate in the time frame of 10 years between 2000, for example, 12 to 2022. And these type of time frames can provide us a good visualization that to find out where is the gap, which country actually haven't focused on those important elements which could lead to empowering policies, and those political actually variables in which of these goals are more highlighted, and how this distributes to provide overall scoring, because we can see that overall score shows North Hemisphere has better condition in sustainability. But when we go deep down through the details of data, there are some gaps that need to be addressed, most particularly on behavioral, as Hassan mentioned in our presentation. The behavior of different countries could be assessed in a way that importance of climate change, how consumption and production could be addressed or should be addressed.
Thank you for that. That's your full book project for you. It's an ongoing long-term project. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
So is there any discussion or points to be mentioned? We're here to listen. Otherwise, we can finish this track. It was a fruitful discussion. I need to express my deepest appreciation to all the participants. Great presentations, great discussions, and I enjoyed being here and talk to you guys. I hope that no one knows about future, but I hope that for the next volume of this COMPA, we could be able to gather here again and talk to each other. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. I want to thank to you as well. Wish you great lunch and afternoon, since here is evening. We are in Europe, and greeting to you all. Hope to meet you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.